Hello, everybody. My name is Richard Vigorelli. This is Vigorelli Institute. Got something interesting for you today. I haven't done a logic episode in a little while, so I've been watching some movies because, well, I've found a thing called Play It Again stores, kind of like secondhand shops, and they've got things like movies. Oh yeah, check that guy. Tremors is a franchise that came out back in the late 80s, early 90s with, well, the movie Tremors. And you had number 2, which was called Aftershocks, right? Yes. Then you got Tremors 3, which is called Back to Perfection. And Tremors 4, A Legend Begins, which is actually a flashback to Perfection, Nevada. Okay. Now, in the movies, there's these giant worm things, and they, live in the ground, and they can move really, really fast through sand, dirt, loose gravel, stuff like that. Don't do so well with solid rock. Can burst through a concrete wall, though. Okay. Here's the problem. They eat anything they want. Now, it was established in the second one that once the worm hits a certain age, then at least one brand new creature will pop out of it. Those are the little aftershock things. They're called shriekers. Okay? And usually one worm will make 3 of them. Okay? Now, these little guys, they have, instead of just being sensitive to vibrations, the way the worms are, which you can mess with the worms, is they can also sense heat. So they've got like eyes, like heat sensors on the top of their head. And they use that to see heat. See, their primary food source is things that are warm-blooded. They go after those. Humans, for instance. Okay? Also, if they eat enough food, what happens is they asexually reproduce. So they'll vomit up a little smaller copy of themselves, which will then grow. Because reasons. Then they hit a maturity level and they go into a cocoon. They then turn into these flying versions. They get wings and they mix like hydrocarbons in their butt and they turn into rockets. They're called ass blasters, and each one of these carries an egg. That egg will eventually create a new worm, and continues from there. Well, it comes out through various other ones that are non-canon, I guess, to this. There's a few others that, like Cold Day in Hell, the Tremors series that came out on Sci-Fi of all things, that there's different variations. There's like a giant African variant, because of course there is. There's an ice variant. There's a seaborne variant. Yeah, that's weird. Okay, now I'm looking at this right now from a biological perspective. What I know about biology, now, yeah, my education might be a little scant in a couple areas, but I'm pretty sure I understand evolution pretty freaking well. Okay? First of all, there's absolutely nothing anywhere on Earth that is like this thing. Okay? Not even something that's adjacent. Okay? For example, cats and dogs share a common ancestor. Oh, about 20, 30 million years ago. Split off, one went one way, one went the other way. Now we have 2 completely different things and they don't like each other anymore. Okay? Etc., etc., etc. But they do basically the same thing. We have nothing else that does anything like this or even behaves slightly like it. The way its body plan is, the way its organs have to be, what it uses to how it reproduces and so forth. It's essentially asexual the whole time. There's plenty of things that reproduce asexually. Nothing like this. There is no way that you can get a worm the size of a bus through asexual reproduction. There's just not enough tumble to the genome. Okay? So, these things are weird. Additionally, in the second movie, it was established that they have been here since the pre-Cambrian era. Which I don't know if you know much about Earth's history. Not a lot was going on back then. Okay? It's called the Boring Billion for a reason. Alright? Not a whole hell of a lot happened because we don't have a record of it. Basically, everything was bacteria, goo, and if it was multicellular, it really wasn't that spectacular. Okay? Like moving mats. The Cambrian explosion is what would have created something like this. But even then, it favored bilateral sexuals. It favored a bilateral, like what I've got, body plan, and sexual reproduction with possible dimorphism depending on the species. Okay? Doesn't have it. Okay? So, here's my thoughts. The graboids are not from Earth. What? See, they're Precambrian. Okay? There hasn't been enough time for life to develop on this world for everything that these things do to be capable of doing what they do. Okay? The reason why my eyes work the way that they do is through millions upon millions years of trial and error, basic refinement of just, I can see better, though I get more food than you, and therefore make more babies. Okay? Somebody also has to think it's cute. Okay? Just kind of what happens. There's a reason why I have white in my eyes. There's a reason why my nose is the shape that it is. Why my skin and hands and everything else look the way that they do. All of this time, things have been refining and refining and refining, down to me, down to you, down to my cat that's sleeping over there, etc., etc., etc. Okay? Not enough time. Not only that, the middle stage, the shriekers, okay, they hunt almost exclusively by heat, okay, not by visual radiation, not by what we call the visual spectrum. They're all the way in the infrared, okay. Warm-bloodedness didn't evolve until about halfway, wasn't really solid until about halfway through the Mesozoic. And it was only in a handful of species, which would have been way too small for these things to deal with. Okay? And afterwards, the place really should have took off. There's no reason why these freaking worms should have hung out in stasis until Europeans showed up in the middle of the desert. These things should have been everywhere, at least on North America. Okay? It doesn't make any sense to me. So, the fact that we have in there, excuse me, I had an itch. The fact that in the second movie, there are, we have fossils of the worms, as shows them being in the Precambrian era, that means somebody brought them here. Because they can't evolve naturally. It's just not possible. Okay? So, who would do that? I don't know. Okay? But they are evolved for an ecosystem that is totally different. One that favors what I would call not a mutative, but a metamorphic asexual reproduction. Okay? That certain amounts of this creature stop being alive so that other parts of it can be. Okay? So that's weird. Because here's the thing. The reason why sexual reproduction took off is because of a thing called genetic drift and variance. Okay? Now, asexual reproduction, what that does is the gametes just replicate themselves and eventually split off and spawn a new organism that's essentially the exact same as the previous one. Lots of organisms do this. The most complex one that I know of is called the Hydra. The biggest one is about the size of my finger. And I'm not a big guy. Okay? There is a species of lizard that doesn't have males in it, though. Although they would have at one point. Okay? There is a phenomenon that happens in some reptiles. It's called apotheogenesis, which is asexual reproduction with larger gametes in larger animals. But one, maybe two species on the planet can do this. And they're both lizards, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. Okay? But to get to that point, they would have had to have sexual reproduction, and they hit a mutation. Okay? Not only that, having all individuals within a species being essentially genetically the same makes you really weak against disease. Okay? In any given population, there's going to be a certain percentage that are going to be naturally immune to any incoming virus, bacteria, or fungus, or even parasite. Okay? And if the other ones die off, then those individuals are able, in theory, to keep the species going, and that forces at least a micro amount of evolution within the species. Now, because that species, the ones that survived, are immune to that pathogen, then they're fine. Okay? That species is now immune to that pathogen. With this, the way these guys grow, that can't possibly happen. Okay? There's not enough genetic drift within the individual unless the genome is extremely unstable, in which case every single generation could potentially spawn a brand new subspecies. In which case, the movies like Colder Than Hell and the African variant one, whatever it is, okay, I can kind of see that happening with those, but then eventually they would outcompete even themselves and go extinct. The whole thing makes no sense. Okay? So I'm leaning that these are A, a science experiment brought to Earth, B, a science experiment sent back in time to see if we can get rid of them, or option 3, see what I did there? And I'm just including this, that they are actually a bleed over from either a parallel universe or dimension. I'll let you be the judge. But I'm leaning aliens. That makes most sense to me. Okay? That, for whatever reason, they decided to drop them off here. You know, the place sucks anyway. We'll see what happens. Or maybe they tried it out and they all died out and then they brought them back or something. I don't know. But these, not from Earth. Okay? It doesn't fit. Hate me in the comments. All right. Well, that's all I got for you. Like, share, subscribe if you're new to the channel. I've got links in the description for my Twitter. Please feel free to follow me and my websites. You can go ahead and get in touch with me there. I do have books and merchandise available. Feel free to make a purchase. And by the way, if you show me the book, I will sign it for you. Oh, I'm not one of those weirdos. Yeah. Also, I like to write things, George. Anyway, gotta go. You take care.